Well, hello. Hi, Happy New Year. How's everybody doing? Oh, yeah, good. Good. Good to see y'all. I am oh, I'm kind of bushed. I don't know about you, but I've been having a little bit of a head cold. Um, it's good to see you all. Happy New Year. It's the I think this might be the first stream on my channel uh this year, actually. I just was on vacation for 3 glorious weeks. Oh, I was in the Caribbean, St. Bart's and St. Martin, which are St. Martin is French and Dutch, and St. Bart's is just French. And it was a lot of fun. I'm really oh, so good, so good. Now I'm back. Now I'm back, and I'm planning a video, and I figured we can just you can join me if you like. I want to do a video looking at all the cool things that data sources do for us, right? In Spring Boot, obviously. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and dissect, Java SQL driver or whatever, but yeah, I've got a few ideas about things I want to look at. So let me share my screen here. Close some stuff here to get my RAM back. And now I'm back in San Francisco, and it is pouring, just pouring. It was tropical weather in St. Bart's and so on just a few days ago. I got back not last night, but the night before at midnight. And I'm a little jet lagged. I woke up at 7, which would have been, 7 here in San Francisco would have been, I mean, what, 11? Is that right? That can't be right. 6 plus 4 is 10. Yeah, that's 11. It's 4 hours ahead. So yeah. So anyway, like my brain thinks it's a lot later in the morning than it actually is. And I don't know why I was waking up at all, so early while I was in the on the islands, because all we ever did, mercifully, was grab some beach chairs and some towels and then head straight to the beach. It was the best. Okay, so now I'm tired from all the relaxing. I don't know how to explain this. It's just silly. So let's see here. Okay. Okay, screen sharing. Good stuff. All right. So I've got a brand new project. Start that Springdale. You know the drill. Actually, if you want, I can do this part live, so you know there's no like rabbits up my sleeve. Move data sources. I'm gonna move this here. RMRF, all of that, except for this. And basically, I'm just trying to. So yeah, I've got JDBC H2, the GraalVM native image support, just because I always love having that there. The actuator, the web support. I've got the web support just because I want the actuator support, and I want the actuator support to talk to me about what's possible in the database. I'm going to use Maven, Spring Boot 3.21, Java 21, jar, etc. Hit generate. Open this up. And then move README to data sources. All right. So here's my basic thing, the list of things I want to like review today in preparation for this video I'm working on. And the basic prompt is, okay, you know the drill. Start that Spring.io, add a database driver, configure the most important property ever, and you're off to the races. But what's actually happening behind the scene? Now, a lot of this is, I think, review for certainly for a lot of you in the audience. It's seem like review. So really, if you're here, let's just hang out. There's some cool stuff. There's some cool stuff around this. Lazy connection data source, for example. I don't know if I want to show this. Maybe I do. I don't know. We'll just go through it. Okay. There's a lot of cool stuff here. I'm gonna like the life of your data-centric application depends on understanding the foundations. And so I guess the first thing you would, if I were gonna configuration, I guess so if I were to separate these out into like little sections, I'll take notes here. Okay, so maybe I'll put this in my in the browser too. So on GitHub, Spring-tips. And I need to sign in. Look at that. I've been away from work for so long that I'm not even signed in. Okay, let's see. Here we go. Waiting for GitHub Mobile to do its thing. How you all doing? How's everything? How was your New Year's? I hope it was dope. Ooh. Look at this. You want to see some other good news? Let's see. We'll talk about that in a second. Okay, let me see. So I'm going to create a new repository here. DataSources. There's some in my head. If I wasn't so, I don't know. It's gray weather outside, and I just feel sort of meh today. So if I had my wits about me, there'd be some sort of joke around data sources for horses or something. I don't know. There's got to be something out there. Okay. Guess I should put all this over here. Okay. Go here. Good. Over there. Great. I'll copy this. Great. Close this. Yes. That. Okay. So. Okay, and then this one. There, I just moved all my tabs from one browser profile to another. The reason I did that is because I just want everything under josh@joshlang.com instead of my corporate company Broadcom email. Okay. Okay, so let's say what set me down this path, yeah? Let me see. I'm gonna create a new Spring Tips, all right? Spring Tips. And then data sources, yeah? And we'll make it public. I don't know. Okay. And then README. Do we want to add a README? We're going to have one. Yeah, okay, sure. So Maven, Apache 2 license to create repository. Okay, take that bit right there. Terminal. Git clone. Okay. So maybe I should close IntelliJ and just move everything to that. What do you think of that, huh? So I'll move downloads, data sources. I'll move that to desktop DS code, CD desktop DS, CD code, RMRF. Yeah, that's it. So git add. There. So this way, if I if everything goes all right, I'll still have the code. If things don't go right, I can just commit the code and I can revert. Initial commit, right? Okay. So RMRF downloads. This one, idea, pom.xml. Okay, so here's what set me down this path, right? I'm looking at this thing right here, lazy connection data source proxy, and I've actually looked at so github.com Spring Tips. Go back to this. Go in here. I've got abstract routing. Maybe I don't. Did I not do that? Spring Tips, abstract, routing. Maybe that was on the list, and I'm sure I sat down and did the original like routing for it. Like the basic beats. Is that possible? I don't have it. Maybe I just put it in github.com Joshua. Let's see here. Abstract. Okay. Well, of course. github.com. Did I put it? Was it in the last year? I think it was older than that. All right. Did I put it in this little channels repo? So abstract. routing. I guess I never got around. That's even better. I thought it was going to be duplicative, but I guess I'll have a chance to figure it out. Data source. No? Okay, let's see. Oh, I wonder if I put it in the attic. Maybe it never went anywhere. No, this is an older one. I guess I could keep that for reference though. Okay, so, okay, well, multiple. There you go, good. So basically, this guy, this has been around in Spring forever. The abstract routing data source, and it is very, very simple. You specify a key, usually a thread local, and you can then override the key methods in this abstract template class to determine how to create the connection given a kind of key, right? And the reason you might do this is you might want to have some sort of thread local indicating that this is a read-only transaction, maybe, and so you can route to the read-only data source. And then you might want to write to another database, and so you might have another database. And again, how you get that thing in the thread local is entirely up to you. You can maybe have some sort of aspect that you create that whenever you call methods annotated with write or @read, maybe you create these new annotations yourself, right? These are custom annotations. I'm not referencing anything in Spring, but the idea is whatever your use case, whether it's for auditing or for I want to like load balance, I want read versus write or whatever. You give yourself some sort of cue, and if it's an annotation or some proxy or some advice that you wrap around your beans, and then that gets invoked, an aspect-oriented sort of advisor, whatever that is, it sets the thread local accordingly, given whatever context you've got, right? Maybe you invoke a method that has a custom annotation, and then when you call the data source, this can look at that thread local and give you the correct data source given the information in the thread local that's used as a key, right? And so this is how you can create one bean in your Spring application context, but then have it point to any of a number of different actual physical connections, right? So it's one logical connection, and this is really convenient because now, you're for Hibernate, you just inject data source, right? You want one database or Spring Data JDBC or whatever. You've got one data source here, and yet it can actually be many different data sources. This isn't supported out of the box in Spring Boot. There's no like auto config as far as I know, but it is admittedly a fairly high level thing. And I certainly have thought over the years I'm going to do a video on this one, and that's what this is. I mean, I thought I already had something. I'm sure I had something somewhere. I'll find it somewhere. But anyway, this is interesting in of itself, and so I was going to do some content on that if I haven't already. And then there's just a bunch of other things that people ask me all the time about databases in Spring. And so, for example, this, one thing that's interesting about this is, now you're wading knee deep in the mire, the quagmire that is having more than one data source in a Spring application, right? And so you have to have a strategy for that. So I was going to cover that as well. Basic configuration, Spring data source URL, blah, blah, blah. Maybe we can look at the embedded database builder. Maybe we look at that next. So my goal, the output of our hacking session the next few hours is I'm going to have examples of all these things. Actually, I don't even know if I have a few hours, maybe an hour and a half or two. I just realized it's near dinner, but my brain is thinking it's more like 10 o'clock at night. So we'll go through this. Basic configuration, embedded database builder, which is a convenience as I'm using H2. We'll go to configure multiple data sources, right? We can look at things like @primary and so on. And then we can also look at how that's handled in the frameworks, right? So for example, Spring Batch has qualifier annotations. Batch data source, I think that's what it's called. Yeah, it's a qualifier annotation. And basically, if you have more than one data source in the application, and that's very common, right? In fact, you might even have Spring Batch working and doing read and writes against SQL Server, but then for the admin data, the metadata, the runtime infrastructure that Spring Batch is required to maintain, that has to live somewhere. And so maybe that's not SQL Server. Maybe you're reading from one SQL Server and you're writing to an Oracle, and you keep all the metadata in your Postgres or whatever, right? So you need some way of telling Spring Batch, hey, I've got more than one bean definition of type data source in the context, but I don't want you to use all of them. Just use this one. And so there's a qualifier notation here. Spring Batch will automatically look for and inject the bean that has that qualifier in it, right? Yeah, and this has higher priority than whatever bean is annotated with @primary, right? That's an interesting use case here as well, because you might have more than one data source, one of which might be primary, which doesn't speak to the use case of I need this data source for Spring Batch. So I think we'll look at that as well. Okay, here we go. And connection pool properties. Obviously, this is, well, we'll look at Hikari and things like that. And Tomcat used to be the default. We can look at, how you can still use some of that maybe. There is a Tomcat example that the wonderful Andy Wilkinson on the Spring Boot team created like a decade ago. Not even kidding. And I think I upgraded that. But of course, as we've just seen, going through those repositories, my recollection of what I have done and what I have not is anything but infallible. So so let's see what we're looking for. Tomcat. Yeah. Okay. March 5th, 2023, right? This is from Andy Wilkinson. So I did work on this one recently. So this is Andy Wilkinson's example. Andy Wilkinson's on the Spring Boot team. He's on the Spring team. He's been a part of the Spring team for longer than I have, at least. He's a legend. I mean, one of the all-time smartest people ever, right? And one of the cool things he did back when Spring Boot 1.30 came out, this is 9 years ago, right? Was he created a sample, right? And this is just an embedded Apache Tomcat with some databases exposed via JNDI. I don't expect people are doing this today. I sure as heck hope you're not. You shouldn't be using JNDI. There's no reason for it whatsoever. But if you are, for whatever reason, trapped in a context or a situation where you have an application server and it's doubly worse, you need to access centrally managed data sources exposed via JNDI, this is a good example. So maybe I can cover that. I don't know. But I had to upgrade it, is what I'm trying to say. I updated it. Did I make it work with Graalvm? It probably just does. I don't know. I haven't tried it yet. Tomcat. So this is his code. It's basically his code. Yeah, I read it. Here's some JNDI runtime hints. But basically, here's the example. So maybe I'll show that as well. So let's put that in the notes. Yeah. Okay. This is his code, Andy Wilkinson's code that I've just updated for Spring Boot 3. Whatever the GA was last March. I guess it would have been 3.0 or almost 3.1, right? Because that came out in May. Or was it April? Whatever. It was there for right around the same time as Spring I/O in Barcelona. And then this thing, of course, our old friend, the abstract routing data source, super useful, very interesting. And then, of course, this thing, local connection data source. And I don't know because I've been on vacation, but I've been watching the activity on GitHub, and I think we're going to have support for this in Spring Boot 3.3. And I love this thing. This has been in Spring forever, right? Absolutely. Yeah, here, 1.14. And yeah, this is a proxy for a data source. So it doesn't get a connection until you're doing something that requires it. And the reason that you care about this is because there's lots of things where we might get a hold of a connection from a connection pool eagerly. So for example, if you have a at transactional, right, and you're using JPA or something, and then that in turn is using a data source behind the scenes. Well, if you want us to start a transaction, then we need to get a connection and set it to be read-only set it to be auto commit is false, and we need to do all that on a connection before the method gets invoked, right? Well, if the method hasn't been invoked, then we don't even know if you're going to actually use it, right? You might not be using the connection pool, and because of that, there's no reason for you to get a connection. You might actually, like if you're using Hibernate, right? I talked about this in my Spring Data JDBC video from last week, by the way, on Spring tips. If you're using a second level cache like Hibernate, JPA, or even memoization in Spring, not the same thing, but let's just say they can both help you memorize complex data sets. Obviously, the integration with JPA and Hibernate is a lot more sophisticated than the simple key-oriented support in Spring. But either way, let's say you've got some request that you can then defer to second-level cache or just some cache mechanism, therefore short-circuiting the need to ever go to the database. Well, in this case, there was no point in having obtained the connection, set it read-only, set it to auto-commit false so that we could do a transaction, right? You want to do, the reason you do set auto-commit is, set auto-commit to false is because, you want to be able to do work against the current session and then batch them up and then commit or roll back atomically. Well, that's not what you get by default with a data source. If you get a regular data source out of most drivers, a regular connection out of most drivers, it'll, as you do things, it'll start sending it to the database. So but basically, we disable that and we create a, for the platform transaction manager, we set that up for you for JDBC data sources. So all I'm trying to say is all that is work, and it requires an actual connection from the connection pool, which is no longer available to somebody else. We're keeping that connection for the life of your transaction, right? Even if, as I say, you've got a second level cache that obviates the need for the connection at all. You're not going to make a connection. There's no need to it. You can resolve it entirely in memory or in some sort of second level cache like EH cache or coherence or grid gain or whatever, right? And so yeah, this is another one of those examples where it's just such a brilliant, really, really good idea. And I think we're going to have, it looks to me like there's work being done in the Spring framework and Spring Boot maybe, and Spring Data around this stuff. So maybe that arrives in 3.3. I don't know, no idea, but I feel like we should talk about it one way or another because it's cool. It's really cool, and it's not like I'm asking you to take a bet on something that's unproven. It's been here for almost 20 years, right? And it's been around forever. It's been around. When did 1.14 come out? I wonder. Spring framework. Nope, not that one. Hey, come back. 1.14. Huh? 2005. So not exactly. Oh wow, it came out. By the way, my birthday is January 31st, and so it just occurred to me that first of all, I should log in and fix this. I'll take it as a note. Let's see. Whoop. Echo fix desktop to-do.md and desktop to-do.md. Okay, so I'll fix it. This was released on my birthday. I was born in '84, by the way. My birthday is later this month. I'll be 40. Can you believe it? 40. It's great. But anyway, this was released on my birthday in 2005. And we added this new thing called the lazy connection data source. And even then, we mentioned the Hibernate possibility, right? Very, very useful. It would be nice to see this thing promoted to a top level thing. So okay, those are the tentpole pieces, friends. Let's just do some code today. Let me go turn on the lights. I just realized it's fast becoming dark in here. In case I need to blow my nose. All right. Well, what is that? Adaptive Server Enterprise. Is that Sybase? SAP. Yeah, it is Sybase. Huh. Okay. Originally known as Sybase. Wait, so did it get acquired by SAP? Right. Oh yeah, Sybase was acquired by SAP in 2010. Gadzooks. See, this is I don't pay any attention to Sybase. I'm sure there are reasons to pay attention. Microsoft SQL Server is one of my favorite databases ever, and it was in turn inspired by Sybase. So, isn't it a fork or something? I mean, Microsoft purchased a license for the source code and began to sell its product as Microsoft SQL Server. Right. Okay. So it has a license from Sybase for the source code, which it then forked, which is kind of interesting. I don't know if I can think of any other example of a company buying and then forking a version of the code while the original, endured. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, let's just talk about all this stuff. We're going to go through and create some examples and document them, and then I'll use that to create a Spring Tips video. Capiche? All right. Configuration. So what do we want to talk about here? I think this stuff is easy, right? So we want to talk about the low-level hanging fruit, right? Spring data source URL, Spring data source password, and username. Now, of course, you should never put this in a property file, right? You should never put the actual credentials in your property file. Use environment variables, use Vault or something like that. Use the Spring environment abstraction. Okay, so configuration. Section. Good. What are the properties that are kind of interesting, that are worth mentioning? We could show the Hikari specific stuff, right? Allow pool suspension, auto commit, connection init SQL query. There's a validation query as well, right? So Hikari query, connection test query. So you can do like, what is the query that will prove that your connection is valid, right? So select one or something like that usually works, or select one at, what is select one? What is the Oracle syntax? I forget, select one from dual or something like that. Okay, so that's kind of interesting. Maybe we can show that as well. Huh? Okay, that's pretty straightforward. Let's just keep these properties. I'll put them in the README. That way I can make changes to this and not worry about it. Show common configuration properties, like properties. Do you all use properties or YAML? Don't be shy. You can speak with confidence and ease that no one will judge you if you are not using YAML. If you are using YAML, then yeah, we're going to judge. There's going to be some awkwardness. YAML with the connection string. Oh, okay. Well, that works. Okay. So here's some properties, and I feel like this part's easy, right? I think most people, if they've used Spring Boot at all in the last 10+ years of its existence, then this stuff is going to be pretty straightforward. So I'm not going to linger too much on that. Yeah. But I do want to register that you can register your own in data source, right? Your own data source. So Java data source, and let me see, get rid of all that. Okay. Go to the data sources application, and here at configuration. Also, I'm having a little bit of trouble typing. Wait, Twitch is offering the highest quality for this stream? I can't imagine why. I've never heard anybody say that Twitch has the sharpest anything. I thought the rules of the constants of physics were that YouTube had better videos and Twitch had better chat. and now you've upended everything. I don't know how to respond to this. I think maybe I need to go back to bed and restart. Okay. So YouTube is really soft on the text. Okay, if I make it larger, is that gonna give it? Maybe it's just a load thing. Like it resolves itself after a few minutes of runtime. But I can make the font a little larger if you like. Font. Oh, I'm so rusty. Let's see. Current editor, mono 19. How come it says 18? What's going on? There we go. Okay. Is that bigger? No, it doesn't feel bigger. So font. All right. I hope that did nothing. I'm so sorry. Let me try this again. 22. There we go. How's that? Is that all? I mean, let me know if it fits in YouTube. Okay, so let's see. Where are we going to start? I guess we got to start creating our Java data source. So this is Java data source configuration. This is the second section, right? And nothing really fancy or special about this. Show how to create a SQL and a embedded one. So we can do this like this. Kari. Do we want to show the Kari stuff? I mean, let's just talk about some of the data sources. Actually, that's a good idea. Let's just talk about some of the custom databases that are possible, right? Like we can talk about all the things you should never do. Yeah, okay, let's do that. So we can talk about driver connection, new driver connection, driver manager data source. This is for demos. This is not a real data source, right? This data source is the, by the way, if you can, you should tell Spring about everything, right? This is from Spring Framework like 1.0, basically. Let me see what this is. It's a simple, 2003, right? It is literally 20 plus years old now. Yeah, it even says this was originally designed alongside Apache Commons DBCP C3PO and featuring Bean style basic data source combo pooled data source classes with configuration properties for local resource setups. For a modern JDBC connection pool, consider Hikari CP, right? So Hikari is amazing, and we definitely, and that's the default in Spring Boot these days. But it does help to understand what's happening. So behind the scenes, when you create, this chair. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to use H2. This is another thing we need to consider. H2 JDBC URIs. I want to create an embedded one. I think it's like JDBC colon H2 / whatever name. This one. So okay. Right. So that's a simple. Let's see if that actually works, huh? So I guess we need some code that demonstrates that, huh? So Bean application runner, or new application runner, and ye old JDBC. Actually, I don't even know if I can take for granted that I'm not sure if I can take that for granted actually. So JDBC client dot create, and then this data source. It's that data source. All right, and then JDBC dot select one. dot query. I think doesn't work. Dot single. Okay. Let's actually keep this. So class connecting application runner implements application runner, and we'll have this, and we'll have pointer to the actual data source, and inject that here. Final JDBC client. Okay, JDBC client dot create this dot data source, and okay, and we can just do this in there. That way I can reuse it across the different things. I'm gonna keep these examples inside of a profile, so they won't be active. They won't all be active at the same time. Right? Okay, pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Connecting application runner. Just define this then, right? Fantastic. This data source. All right. So what do you think? That should work, right? Let's see if that works. That'll give us. Okay. And so we can confirm. Well, that's very nice. I appreciate it. Thanks for joining us ever so briefly. It's nice to see you again. We did a lot of events over there in Japan during the Pivotal Days, so it's hopefully. And I was just there actually last year as well for a bunch of small events. Hopefully, we'll meet again, huh? And yeah, please come hang out on this live stream. I do a lot of live streams normally, but I've been on, like I say, on vacation for the holiday and just got back a couple of days ago. Okay, so yeah, so that works. So we got a simple Java data source. How do we know that it worked, right? Let's inject all of the data sources. Yeah, that's another good test. Is we want to inject all the data sources and enumerate them, right? So what I'm creating these little classes to debug, so we can kind of see the state of the context for the different apps that we're going to build. So enumerating application runner. Okay. And we're going to ask Spring. We're going to say, Spring, please give us a list, a map rather, of all the data source beans. Okay. All right. And state this data source map size greater than 0. No, I can just do is empty, is not empty. There should be at least one data source class get name. Good. Yes, that's a great point. Yeah, the Hikari pool test result is visible. But remember, I'm not using Hikari right now. Right now, we're just using the driver manager data source, right? That's this one it's not meant for production. This is a simple, it just creates a driver, it gets the Java SQL driver instance, creates a new connection from it each time. This is not a connection pool, but it's good for if you're just using Tomcat 4.0 from 2002 or whatever, and you want to work offline and just have a thing in your unit test. This is great. So yeah, Hikari does have a connection validation, a validation connection query, but we'll look at that later. Okay, so I've got so given the map, so for var key this data source map key set, system out b equals this data source dot map get b, right? Yeah, works for me. How do I get the actuator tab? That's a great question. Oh, because I have it on the class path. This is IntelliJ Ultimate. I think so. Isn't that what it's called? IntelliJ Supreme. No, IntelliJ Ultimate Edition. So that's nice, right? And they have this tab. Yeah, if you have and this is actually very useful, by the way. There's all sorts of stuff here. Yeah, your beans, your health, your mappings. I have to configure the properties to enable everything. So I want to see everything. I'd have to say expose. No, I want JMX and HTTP. And then restart. Oh, I need to make a request, perhaps. No, actually. Refresh. Oh, include. Okay. So your beans, health, all the mappings, all that kind of stuff. Okay. It's really sophisticated what they got here. We have similar support in the Spring Tool Suite via the language server that we built for inspecting during the runtime. In fact, I kind of wonder if the IntelliJ support came from the stuff that we put in the Spring Tool Suite and the Visual Studio Code language server so many years ago. Because it's all inspecting the live running actuator. So what you do here actually impacts that. Okay, that's neither here nor there. Although that is a good point. We should talk about the actuator support, right? What does that buy me? If I'm using actuator? What does it buy me? Well, I mean, I can look at the bean. Let's actually try this. Okay, so we'll go here, reload, localhost 8080 actuator. Okay, and I've got beans. You got the metrics endpoint. Surely that's enough, right? You can look at well, I guess because I'm not using Hikari, I don't see anything here. If I were using let me put that back. Okay, let me fix this. And also let me register an instance of this one as well, right? So and then we want the map of string to data source. Okay. These two, I'll just, for now, let's just say they're invariant. Every configuration and every example we do would benefit from them. So default data source configuration runners. Okay. So not worry about that, but this will be only in a particular section. So profile, Java. Okay. Yeah, we can text. That's a good point. From the health endpoint, we can look at the data source. Right, totally. But yeah, that's a good point. But I wonder what happens if, as of right now, we don't have a connection pool, which is a good point. Okay, let's run this. So did it give me anything useful here? So, okay, why did that do? Oh yeah, because this is under a profile, right? So the Hikari data source was created for me. But if I remove this and then recreate this, then, oops, sorry, Hikari is still created because I got a little ahead of myself there and commented everything out, right? So the data, you can see I've got, there's no Hikari anymore, right? I created it myself, so Spring backed off and deferred to my custom data source, which still worked. I was still able to make a request, so we know that worked. But yeah, it's not Hikari. So now, you're right. Let's look at the health indicator. What does that buy us if we're not using that? Okay. DB up, H2 validation query. Oh, interesting. So what is that actually showing us? So if we go to health report, health endpoint, something like that, right? Health endpoint support, health endpoint configuration. Yeah. And then find the thing that's actually showing us the SQL. Let's see, HTTP code status map, health endpoint groups, health contributor. Okay. Okay, health indicator that tests the status of a data source and optionally runs a test. Well, cool. So we have our own validation. It's not hard to imagine what we're doing, right? We're literally just creating the JDBC template and running a query for you. Do health check. So if the data source is null, then we say the database is unknown. Otherwise, do the data source health check, which means getting the validation query, executing the query. Why, I wonder, is my SQL? Wow. I have no idea why anybody uses this. I still don't know. It's just inconceivably weird. Okay, so we're running a query, validation query. Okay, so it's not doing anything with Hikari. That's cool, but it's just doing a validation check for us using the validation query that we provide, which I suppose must be configurable, right? Isn't it? So management data source ignore. Look at that. Health ignore routing data sources. Why is that true? Because that's a good point, right? If we have a routing data source, which is a composite, then you wouldn't be able to get the actual interesting. I wonder what. Yeah, it's a good point. If you're using one of those aforementioned routing data sources, you can't get the health of that routing data source because it's actually a composite of a number of different data sources. That's a good point. We should definitely mention that. So where does it get used? Let's see here. Data source properties is ignore routing data sources. Okay, so we're filtering. We're saying, okay, as long as it's not an abstract routing, this is super cool. We should mention this. Okay, so management health DB. Down here, abstract routing data source. If you don't want to test the yeah, neat. Oh, hey, that's so cool. Thank you very much. I'm glad to hear it. I love to hear good things like that, right? And good luck to you and keep it up, Soon I'll be taking notes from you, That's awesome. I love when I hear things like that. Okay, so let me think. Now, I could have just done soft line wraps. I don't know why I didn't think of it. Here, view. Is it in here somewhere? Soft. View active editor. There you go, that one. All right. So okay, skip ahead. We don't want to skip it. So what was I saying? I was saying that we have actuator support and beg your pardon. Somebody just knocked on my door. 1 second. All right. It's like a Mr. Starbucks man's neighborhood around here. I've got my neighbors, my wonderful neighbors that have, they're as close to family as I've ever gotten without being blood related, And they just popped in. They're here. We're gonna do dinner later, but they came over a little early, so we'll continue this for a little bit, and then I'll join them. Okay, so yeah, have a custom. What is the bean itself? What is that called? Data source health indicator, right? So I guess that what I was trying to look for before was, what is it using for the actual validation query? Like, where is it? Is there a property that gets fed into it? And I guess we have to check this. Sybase on Sequent Dynex PTX was your first experience with SQL. Yeesh. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely. I mean, there's so many good. Sybase is a good database, right? SQL Server is a great database. A little slow, but really, really good. It does everything, DB2, similarly, very slow, but does everything. It does everything. Oracle, it can be obscenely fast, and it does everything. Postgres, I mean, it's the undisputed most widely used SQL database in the world at the moment, right? It's just just an amazing database. I'm a big fan, but so and then you get these ones that are not good. You know what I just learned about? Actually, the other one that I just learned about recently. I mean, sometimes I think I'm sleeping under a rock most of the time. I learned about a database called DuckDB. Is that right? Am I making this up? I could be making it up. This one, an in-process SQL OLAP database management system. In process, so it's like SQLite or something like that. But it's meant to handle analytics, vectorized and parallel engine. Like it can ingest data, parallel Parquet, CSV. Larger than memory processing. but it's a SQL database. You can just here like get that JDBC driver and just talk to it, right? I mean, amazing. Look at this. Never even heard of this thing until like right before vacation. Brew install duckdb. I would probably just use the Docker image first, but no, actually you can't use the Docker image. It's like SQLite. You have to have it's just files on your local machine, right? So connect client APs. I wonder what the C code looks like. Wow, this is pretty good documentation. Overview, startup. Do I hate my viewers? Is that why I'm looking at C code? No, that's not it. Let's just look at the Java code. Here you go. Java duckdb : this is like H2 or SQLite or whatever. It's embedded, right? Yeah, this is cool too. I know some people are writing a book on this as well. I think it's a fellow Java champ. I don't want to say it because I'm not sure if it's public yet, but a friend of mine is writing a book on this stuff as well, and it's really, really cool. I mean, look at this. Miracles, you know. Select all from generate series 2000, whatever. You could, iterate through it. Yeah, just straight up regular Java code. Yeah, nice. So there's so many great databases out there. That's all I guess I was trying to say. Ingress was the database that inspired Postgres. Yes, I mean the ancestry for Postgres is the lineage, the pedigree is amazing. Okay, so where do we leave off? README. Okay. So actuator. Okay. I think we did what I was trying to do was to show the Java data source stuff. No, I didn't actually. Let's do that again. I just realized there's an embedded one too. So this one. Getting a little cramped in here. Yeah, okay. So this is I'll close that out. This is an invariant. We're going to use it for everything. This one too. Actually, maybe it's just simpler to keep it all here. That way I can hide it and keep it out of our mental, I don't want it to clutter our code, right? So I'm going to collapse this there. That's better. So I've got the default stuff that'll run no matter what. Then I've got stuff under in profiles. So if I leave this here, then this overrides the default database that you get, right? And it's a simple example. You should never use this in production. It even says so. Not that anybody reads this stuff, but this close is not an actual connection pool. It does not actually pull connections, right? And I just mentioned that just so we're on the same page. It is this class is superseded in certain environments by the simple driver data source, right? Which has been in Spring from 2.5.5. Oh, I wonder if I should. Yeah, it's not a connection pool either. I'm just used to the driver manager data source because I've been using that for 20 years or whatever. What does this do differently, I wonder? Abstract driver data source, okay. Oh yeah, look at that. Driver manager data source, simple driver data source, single connection data source. I wonder what it's kind of cool. Okay, whatever. So we've got this very simple data source, but I'm not trying to actually set up, this is not real. Obviously, you want to have a real connection pool. In our case, we're using an embedded database. So one other thing I wanted to show is that Spring has these handy embedded data source. Return new embedded database builders, okay, and build. I mean, that should work, right? Let's see. So are we going to tie this into Spring integration as a message source? You could. That's a good question. So there is a Spring integration JDBC inbound and outbound adapter. Yeah, you could use that, but I'm not going to show that here. I really want to just focus on the low-level mechanics of java.sql.data source and its integration in Spring Framework and Spring Boot. And right now, it's taking us a lot of time to kind of figure out the routing. I want to figure out. I do this for all my videos. We're just doing this live together because I'm bored, and I'd go back to bed if I wasn't doing this. but basically, this stuff will go quick. I mean, when you see the actual finished video, I'm going to be working real quickly to go past as much of this as possible in the first 10, 15 minutes so that we can get to the last 2 or 3 bullet points on the README, which I think are the more interesting and yet more advanced things. Whoa, did you see that? It's officially nighttime, night mode. That's cool. Oh, thank you. You really enjoyed the integration flow streams from earlier in this. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you joining me for those. I'll do more, of course. Okay, so this is so basically, the only thing I would suggest using is this, the embedded database type. We're not using Derby, although you could. We're not using HSQL, you could. This is just for H2, which happens to be what we're using, which is nice. Now, this, of course, brings us to another question of, well, how do I tell Spring which one to prefer, right? So Spring tips, and then this one doesn't have a URL. We didn't specify anything. So how do I tell Spring? Like right now, I've got these. Well, I've got this code right here, which is injecting one data source, right? The connecting. I'm going to do a validation query, right? And maybe I can even do maybe I can debug the data source as well, right? System out this data source get. I don't know. What do we want to do? Maybe just try toString. Maybe that'll give us something useful that we can use to distinguish it, right? But who knows? Okay, so basically, how does it know which one to get? Well, Spring honors the @primary annotation, right? This is a profile. It's a qualifier annotation, right? Okay. Okay, so you can see we've got the embedded database factory, embedded data source proxy. So when I asked it for one data source in this, I injected just one data source, and it has two, and you can see it printed out. One bean is called data source, and it's a driver manager data source, and the other one's called embedded data source, and it's an embedded data source factory. So we can see that there are two, but it correctly gave us this one, right? That's not JDBC specific, but it is worth mentioning. So maybe I'll put a little note in there. Actuator support Java. Okay, so okay, driver with EG. Okay. That's this one here. Okay. So I guess is that pretty straightforward? Any questions on this kind of stuff? I mean, I feel like this is all pretty. This is still not production worthy, right? Because you're going to want a connection pool. So I guess the next thing we could do is to show how to manually configure. Oh, did I do a good job there? I mean, does that cover? Because in my list here, I've got multiple of them, right? And I guess I could show to do mention things like Spring batches, batch data source. Yeah, that would be, I think, one message. Maybe I could collapse these three things. Yeah. Okay. I still feel like I'm not doing it right. Okay. So anyway, we've got the embedded data. So maybe I create let's create a connection pool, right? So Hikari data source. And I could do this myself, but Spring Boot's already doing it. So it's data source auto configuration, right? And then in here somewhere, we've got tests to determine if you've got, for example, the Apache Tomcat connection pool or Hikari or whatever on the class path. And then based on that to create your data source, right? So pooled data source available, data source finder, data source builder, find type, get the class loader. Match. Oh, okay, right. That's what this. So this is. What is this doing? This is. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, let's see. This is kind of this could be a little rabbit hole. I'm not sure if I want to tug on it. Look up pooled class letter. Oh, cool. Oh, okay. So it's literally looking for any of these to determine if we are in uh, a Spring application context that has a recognized connection pool type. So if it's Hikari, or if it's the Apache Tomcat one, or DBCP2, or the Oracle one, or the C3PO one. And I think this is our preferred one by default these days, right? We like if you don't do anything but specify Postgres or whatever on your start.spring.io and you specify GDBC, you'll end up with a Hikari data source by default configuration. What are we doing here? Look up basic. There's some amazing. I mean, this is all stuff that you could do yourself. You know, that's nothing new under the sun. But there's just so many little corner cases like this. This is why I love Spring. Look at all this. This is disgusting code. I would never have to write this kind of stuff, right? Somebody's going to keep track of all the connection pools and make them work for you seamlessly, and it just works. I just love that. But okay, so let's say we wanted to do that ourselves, right? So how does Spring do that? We go here, data source, auto configuration. We go down here. Has a data source URL. Right, get the outcome, pool data source. So if this test is true, and we saw what it does, it looks for data sources that are pooled. If it's true, then where does that get used? Pool data source available. I have no idea what the, is it just so that they can inject this bean? I don't know what that does. Oh, is it any nested? Okay, so this is saying if the pooled one is available, or the Spring data source type is explicitly specified. Okay. Hi, greetings from San Francisco, Nepal. What a small world. Good to see. Good to talk to you. Welcome. Thanks for hanging out. Okay, so properties, JDBC connection, data source, pooled. So basically, this is importing the Hikari config, the Tomcat config in the normal, sort of style. DBCP2, Oracle UCP, generic, and JMX. Okay, so by default, it's going to try Hikari, and it's going to then evaluate these conditions. It'll say if this class is on the class path, it is, and if this type is on the class path, it is, and if this is here, sorry, if the type Spring data source type equals this, and it's true, which is defaulting to true, then evaluate this Java configuration, and what it's going to do is this. It's going to just create a Hikari data source like that. Okay, so we could do something similar, just for our example. Okay, data source configuration or not. Connection details. What is this doing? So this is looking for data source configuration, package private. Neat. Okay, well, we can borrow the code. Oh, here we go. Data source builder. Is that package private? Doesn't look like it. Yeah, okay. We can just copy that, huh? Nice, nice. Good stuff. Love it when a plan comes together. Love that. Okay, so var db dot, and we give it a class loader. So we have to var class loader. This is class loader utils. Class loader. System. I can just do the default. Okay, there we go. class loader. And the type here is supposed to be the type that we want to use, which of course is going to be the Hikari one. So let's look for the type in that test that we just saw earlier here. I guess that's the one here. Yeah, type. Where's the ini pooled? We just did this, right? Where's the match if missing? Huh. It's in the Hikari. That's got to be right? Hikari. This one. But then where's the import? Didn't we just see this? I could have sworn we just saw this. Pooled data source. Okay. Hikari. There we go. This is the one. So it's going to look for that. That's going to be the type. Spring data source type. So we can put that in there manually. What is the connection details? We should look at that. Username. Oh, I know. Okay, it's actually the connection details from Spring. So Spring in 3.1. Is that right? I think it's 3.1. We introduced, maybe it's 3.1. It's yeah, that's the one where we introduced test containers and Docker Compose support, right? So we have this thing for data source configuration. So we have data source connection details or JDBC connection details, right? There you go. Okay, so we should mention that as well, right? Which is that now when you, so there's two implementations of this, one for properties, one for Docker image. So here's your properties implementation. And I guess we don't have we obviously must have something. So find usages. I don't have the test container support on class path. That's what I think it is, nor the Docker Compose support. But basically, there's another implementation of this details interface, JDBC connection details, that knows how to source that connection credentials from your Docker Compose daemon, your Docker daemon, which supports Docker Compose, or from test containers, which is a Java API for manipulating Docker images. So ultimately, they're both talking to the Docker daemon. Okay, so if I use this whole thing returns a data source, right? In case that wasn't clear. So it's a var db. Maybe I'll just make it like the fact that this doesn't break. Maybe it's just a hint for me to remind people that this is what's happening. All of this is building up a data source for me, and then I can just return that. Okay. Actually, what does it bring in? It's giving me a Hikari data source, which is actually what I wanted. So. And that actually makes the point as well, that these are both data sources. Okay, so now I've got 3 data sources, right? The primary one is this embedded one. But that does bring a great point, which is if I use, oh, yeah, don't do that, please. Please don't do that. Like, it's in the Java doc. Please don't do that. Yeah, just let Spring do it for you. Use the Hikari data source. It's boss software. It's better than the connection pools you'll get out of WebLogic or Tomcat or whatever. It's really good, and you can just look how easy it is to create. Right. Okay. So anyway, basically, we introduced that connection details hierarchy. That is what gets the properties or the Docker data, and then that is used in turn to create the actual data source. So we have a little bit of indirection. Input configuration mechanism to connection details, which has no relationship to data sources. Then we use that to create either a connection details connection factory for RGBC or a SQL database with a connection pool. Yeah. You changed it already. Good. Okay. Much better. All right. So yeah, we've got it. So I've got 3 examples here, right? And I think that'll be useful for people to see that you can actually there's actually this very convenient hierarchy. You don't have to This is actually part of Spring right here, DataSource Builder, right? We can look at this code, I guess. Let's see what this thing does. Driver class name. Okay. Yeah, just a very convenient way to. It knows about hit car. Wow, they're very cool. It's a builder, right? So you feed in the same exact properties, and it'll give you a connection pooled implementation of one of these four: Hikari, Tomcat, Apache DBC P2, and Oracle UCP. That's new, and it's been in Spring Boot since 2.0. Very, very convenient. Okay, so we'll mention that as well. I think that's useful to show. Let me commit my atrocities. DB configuration. Git push. Okay. Oh, look at that. Actually, no, I buried the lead. It not only does it support these four, but if you explicitly specify the type, it'll also support the simple driver data source. It'll support oracles, support H2, Postgres, the PG simple data source, and any other data source implementation. So remember, when we talk about a data source, most people, this is another thing, maybe it's worth talking about this, like when you learn JDBC and when you just start with the API, you'd be forgiven for thinking that the connection and the driver are the most important parts, right? Like maybe we should talk about this, right? So, like, let me see, go back down here, comment that out. Yeah, like here's a comment that. Okay, that configuration, basic JDBC configuration. You know, before data sources. Okay, and return. So what I'm going to do is, let's say I've got the driver for H2. H2. It's not a class path, is it? It's not scoped correctly if I want to be able to see it. So yeah, runtime. Reload driver. Hey. Yeah, this guy right here. This is org.h2. Okay. And is it public? Yeah, it is public. Okay. How come my build still doesn't see the type? Go here. I already re-imported it, didn't I? Hello. There you go. So var h2 driver class, right? That's the class that's when they build a integration, when somebody builds a JDBC implementation that talks to a SQL database, there's actually 4 different types of JDBC driver. I don't know that anybody cares about these distinctions anymore, but there used to be a lot of knobs and levers here, very low level stuff. When you think about it, nobody cares about this stuff now, but JDBC, I think actually is part of the spec, right? Like JDBC level 1 driver, Okay, type 1, that's what it is. So you get a JDBC ODBC bridge, a native API driver, right? So this JDBC type 1 driver is using the JDBC ODBC bridge. Doesn't the data source builder already support that? So the question is, it would be the comment here, which is right, sounds reasonable, is if the thing supported connection pool properties, but doesn't it? No, I guess it doesn't. You're right. That's a bummer. Okay, well, but on the other hand, let's go. Okay, so back to this. So where's our thing here? Yeah, this thing. So this is there's 4 different types of drivers. Let's actually mention this. I think this is also kind of interesting stuff. Most people don't remember this stuff. Where's our README? Here. Okay, so what's in a data source? The your interface is driver, not data source. Not all JDBC implementations are created equal. Type 1 through 4. Like that. There, so you've got like 4 different types of, so yeah, we've got the ODBC bridge. This is, so if you ever used Windows, Windows has this database. I mean, I'm not sure if ODBC is like Windows only, or if it works in other things as well. Standard application programming interface for accessing database management systems. ODBC accomplishes database DBMS independence by using an ODBC driver. So okay, apparently it was originally developed by Microsoft and Simba Technologies. It became the basis for the call level interface, standardized by the SQL access group and Unix and mainframe field. Okay, so ODBC is a set of APIs for talking to databases, and it makes sense that one of the first things they did when they created JDBC was to create a bridge. So there's a JDBC driver that just forwards to ODBC. So that's JDBC type 1. It makes use of ODBC, which in turn depends on native libraries, right? So even if you can't find the right JDBC driver, and you probably can. I mean, we got almost 30 years of Java now, so basically there's everything. But this is the JDBC ODBC driver. It's closed source, it's native, it's not Java, blah, 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 right? It was removed in Java 8. So apparently that's, you wouldn't use this anymore, right? I didn't know that it was removed. That's interesting. I mean, I don't know anybody using it, but it's just interesting that it was removed. Okay. Native API driver. So this is the type 2, also known as a native API driver, is a database driver implementation that uses the client-side libraries of the database. This driver converts JDBC method calls into native calls to the database API. For example, the Oracle OCI driver is a type 2 driver. Now, I don't understand. Are they saying that like for example, the Oracle JDBC driver is then talking to a native Java? When they say native, I'm wondering if they mean C code or if they mean like a Java specific API that has nothing to do with JDBC, or talking to Oracle OCI. But either way, you've got a JDBC wrapper that adapts a native API. Whether that native API is another Java API that's just non-standard, or C, I'm not quite clear. But okay, and then type 3 is a network protocol driver, and this is, I think, very common. This is what Postgres is doing and whatever. So basically, the Java JDBC code that you get when you use a driver actually does the protocol. It actually sends data over the wire and talks to the database itself. Okay. Okay. And then finally, type 4, also known as direct to database pure Java driver, is a database driver implementation that converts JDBC calls directly into a vendor-specific database protocol. Wait, what is this? Oh, I'm sorry, I got that wrong. This number 4 is what most of us are using when we use like Postgres, for example. But if, let's say, you've got some sort of middleware in the application server, and it doesn't speak JDBC, but you've got a JDBC driver that when you use it will call the middleware, and then it in turn can talk to the backend system. Oh, that's interesting. Look at that, middleware, application server. So I guess I guess you could conceivably imagine some sort of a mainframe or something like that. Okay, whatever. Okay, so the point is, there's all sorts of different types of JDBC drivers, and they're not all like this, right? When we think of JDBC, I think most of us think of this last one here, which makes perfect sense, but realistically, the world has a lot of other JDBC drivers, and when you use JDBC, what do you start with? Well, you start with the driver class, right? And if you look at this, driver manager dot get driver, right, or drivers, and then you can visit them, right? So dot for each driver system out bound driver dot toString. Okay. Yeah. And what do you get when you let's just run it, I guess. Driver enumerating application runner. Okay. Okay, what do we got? Yeah, we found only one driver registered. But the point is, each driver implementation, when it's loaded, there's a static initializer in each of these drivers that calls driver manager dot register driver, right? And that's how, there's actually this loose sort of system global state around which drivers are available to you in a given class path, right? If that's the sort of convention. I never liked this. I never understood it, actually, and I still don't understand it. Why do this? Why does there need to be a single place to enumerate all the drivers? How dynamic is your environment where you dynamically need to decide? And there's better ways to do this dynamic resolution. Like Spring can do dynamic resolution, right? Or what's it called? Java Spaces or whatever. And it just seems like whatever. Anyway, the point is, there's a driver manager. It knows about your drivers, okay? And so given a driver, in this case, org h2 driver, right, which is the same as this. It's the same class. Is this actually the class, or is it actually an instance of it? It looks like it's an actual instance of it, right? So you have an instance of the driver, okay? And then what can we do with the driver? Well, maybe we want to create a SQL statement. So private void work with driver, right? And we get the driver instance. And here, I want to actually use this, okay? So I'll say work with driver, pass that in. Okay, good. And then here, we print that out. And now I want to get a data source. So I can, or actually I want to make a connection. So I can create the connection like this. Let me see, connect is your URL. Although I kind of wonder what happens if you pass in null, right? Yeah, anyway, you create the connection like this. So in my case, I could use, where's my Hikari example? This one. Okay. Okay. Put that in. Oops, I want to do Hikari. Sorry, H2. This one. So we go to driver. There. And I have no properties, so new properties there. And those throws an exception, and place. Okay. Okay, so we've got the work with driver. So now I've got a connection here, right? That's what that actually gives me. So when you behind the scenes, when you use a connection pool, this is what you're doing: is you're avoiding having to recreate these connections each time, right? The data source that you use, the connection pool that's implemented in terms of data source, is often going to do this work for you, right? And then this gets you to that driver manager data source implementation that we saw earlier. Equals new driver manager data source. Can I just pass in a JDBC driver? Guess not. Simple driver data source. Can I pass it? Yeah, I can. There you go. Driver. So there you go. I can pass in the driver and this. And then behind the scenes, that's going to do exactly what I just did above. Right? It's going to create a connection manually for us. New properties. Or you can pass in username and password, but I'm using embedded, so it doesn't matter. Okay. So connection. And actually, yeah, let's just check that out. So when you do get connection, it's doing all that stuff I just did for you, right? Get connection from driver, get the driver, get the URL, driver.connect, URL, and properties. Seems straightforward, right? So now that you understand that, like data source, you don't have to, when you create a driver, JDBC driver for a database, you don't necessarily have to ship a data source implementation. You just have to ship a driver. The work of connection pooling and auditing and all that stuff, that you do in terms of the data source. And when you use JDBC or databases in Spring or any enterprise application in the last 20 plus odd years, we think about the world as in terms of data sources, but that's not how driver implementers think about it. There's no guarantee that you'll get a data source. I mean, you often do, but there's no guarantee, right? And that's fine because all you really need is a driver implementation, and then the rest can be handled otherwise. And there's also another use case here, going even further than data source. There's a XA data source, right? This thing right here, and this is from Java SQL. It extends the common data source, but it provides lifecycle methods to support, Java transaction demarcation and rollback and all that in a JTA context, Java transaction authority or whatever. It's a two-phase commit type of transaction, right? Okay. Is that all? Would that all? If I did all that, if I covered that, albeit with more conciseness, not a lot more, but some more conciseness, do you think that would be interesting? That bit there on the driver versus data source and all that kind of stuff. Thumbs up, thumbs down, who knows? Let me know in chat, would you? Yeah, that exactly. Today, a data source is the preferred high-level way for business code to access the database. But you do so you're not gonna you're gonna use Hikari, which is a data source, and it in turn will create connections for you, right? And so yeah, and of course most of us don't deal with data sources directly at all anymore. We use Spring Data JBC or Spring Data JPA or MyBetas or Java OQ or whatever, and all those things use javax.sql data source. So there's so many levels of like indirection between you and your business logic and the actual thing that gives you your SQL result sets that I think people lose sight of that. So maybe I'll cover all that. I don't know if that's, I don't know. Feels like that'd be kind of fun to talk about. It's something I remember having to learn, in the 90s, but I'm not sure if anybody cares. So okay, let's see. Type 1, type 2. Yeah, okay. Let's go back to this code here and close all these other tabs. So let's keep track. So this is the default. Okay, that's invariant. Great. Basic. This is a drivers and data sources. configuration, profile, JDBC driver. Okay. Good. Yeah. Okay. And then we can show this. So then we can show like Java config for data sources. So actually, yeah, so this would be like step one. We'd actually do this first, drivers and all that stuff. Then we talk about data sources, right? And the lowest level way to do it, you can just create a data source yourself. And then that in turn talks to a number of different, it talks to your driver connection, etc. We could do embedded databases, just a quick aside, just a nice thing we have in Spring. Then we can talk about the Hikari data source, right? And the Hikari data source is the default. But again, you don't need to create this yourself. That'll be done for you. So now what? Now what's the next thing we should talk about? README. Okay, are we already there? Oh, JNDI. Do you want to do the JNDI is such an anachronism. I don't even know if it's worth showing that. I don't want to promote JNDI in 2024, you know? For those of you just who've been in the industry but not long enough to remember this abomination, it used to be that we had these big monolithic things called application servers. You deployed your code inside of them, and the idea was that you could pool expensive things like database connections, and so then you'd have a single point of failure that could impact all of the running programs instead of just one of them, right? And we thought that was a great idea, and we thought, okay, well, if we're going to have one Java object for a database connection, and we intend to like scale that up to 11, and we want to make that one single database connection pool available to all the different applications running in the application server, then we could put it inside of a directory, and we give it a hierarchical LDAP-like name. LDAP's neat, but this was a JNDI was weird. And so then you could literally just look up the reference, like a map. You'd ask this application server-wide global context called JNDI for a reference to a object, which you could then downcast to a data source. And Spring does that for you. And this is one of the nice things about Spring is you can write your code using, I just want to declare a dependency on javax.sql, that data source. I don't care that the javax.sql data source came from your anachronistic application server JNDI context, and I don't care that it came from environment variables in your Kubernetes context or whatever, or from Docker or whatever. I just want to like write code in terms of javax.sql, that data source. And through the magic of inversion of configuration and dependency injection, we can have that, right? Yeah, maybe I can just have that little spiel. I mean, I really don't feel like it is cool. Andy Wilkinson, everything Andy Wilkinson does is cool. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's worth showing JPI. Where'd that code go? Here's the one he created. Here's the one. Oops, lost to time. Did I write it down? Here, yeah, I did write it down. Okay, go open that up. So what is this code doing? Well, I've got some SQL, got some data, got a Spring data source URL, localhost Postgres, all that kind of stuff. And then in the Java code, I'm customizing Tomcat. So you used to be able, you can do this with XML if you have a standalone Tomcat deployment. And I'm only using Tomcat because it's the least offensive. But like this is a thing you would do with an application server. So you'd have somebody drag and drool. They'd log into the application server console, and they'd type in the username and password and all that stuff, and it would be completely the opposite of GitOps. It would be drag and drop, point and click, and hope to goodness sakes that nobody has to do a password rotation. And then you'd start the application server, and then you deploy applications to it. And when those applications started up, they would hope that they had the right JNDI connection string to be able to find the object that the operator had configured for them in that context, and then they would get a reference to it. And so the way you do that is using the JNDI initial context object, right? And so in Spring, we can do that for you. But here's how you programmatically tell Tomcat, instead of using XML or console. Oh, hey, that's really cool. Thank you. Thanks for that. I appreciate it. So here we're programmatically telling Tomcat when it starts up to register a context resource with a JDBC my data source name for JNDI, and then here's the driver name, and I'm getting the username and password and all that stuff from the property file. And then I'm creating a context resource. So then Tomcat will start up, and when it starts up, it'll start up before the rest of Spring Boot does because it's embedded. And then I'm defining a data source object as the client of that, as the consumer of that Tomcat bound JDBC data source object. And I'm creating I'm using the ye old JDBC object factory bean, and I'm telling it, hey, look in the directory for Java comp. That's the global, it's static. All JNDI code assumes that. env JDBC my data source, right? So remember, this is the same JDBC my data source, and then JDBC my data source. And I'm telling Spring to, because you can also look up, JMS and other things in JNDI if you really, really hated yourself. So you could do all sorts of things in JNDI. And so here I'm telling it, I want to convert that resulting object to a data source. And I'm saying, look it up lazily, right? When we first use this, as opposed to when the application starts up, because there might be a lifecycle issue. The Tomcat JNDI data source might not be fully initialized by the time Spring comes along and then wants to inject a reference to it. And then we're going to create a controller. We're going to inject the data source, and then we can look it up manually, right, using the initial context like that. Or we can do something high level with JDBC client or the JDBC template. Okay. Well, anyway, yeah. I don't know. Maybe I show that. I don't know. I don't know. I don't feel like that's. Maybe we can, because we're showing the embedded one, right? We might as well make the point that Spring gives you a lot of different ways to participate in or to work with databases, right? Configuration. So yeah. Good question. Do we need to wrap the data source with transaction-aware data source proxy to be able to use at transactional annotation? It depends. You shouldn't need to use transaction-aware data source proxy, right? This is only if you're doing low-level stuff directly with the data source. So, yeah. why do you need this? Let's say you wanted to do something with a data source, and you're using it directly, right? You're going to use the data source to get the connection and create the statement and do all that stuff, and then to work with the queries and all that. If you're doing that and you're not using at transactional and you don't have a platform transaction manager and you don't have the ALP stuff set up, then you can use this as the wrapper for your data source, and it'll be aware of Spring's transaction demarcation. But I tend to wonder why you wouldn't just like let the platform transaction manager do it, right? This is an old class. This might be a little too low level. Hmm. Hmm. Maybe I should. Yeah, okay, maybe we should talk about it. Hmm. This might be too low level, y'all. I'm not sure if this is going to be like good entertainment. Proxy for target JDBC data source, adding awareness to Spring managed transactions. Yeah, see, if you're using Spring DataSource Utils, JDBC template, or JDBC client, then, oh, JDBI. I don't know either, actually. Yeah, that might be interesting. If you've got some other thing that is managing its own transaction, then maybe you need this. I'm not even sure if it's. I don't know. That one is a. I need to think about it. I think I'm just getting hungry. Okay, so we're gonna put that as a huge maybe. Okay, I don't know because I don't want to talk about it, but on the other hand, I do see a lot of the mentions of some of the other stuff I'm gonna cover. So maybe I should mention it. Maybe you're right. Okay. Okay, so in that same vein, though, right, we have this guy right here, abstract routing data source. And the abstract routing data source is great for multi-tenancy. Actually, that's another use case. So, okay, so the abstract routing data source, remember I talked about this earlier, but for those of you just joining, the idea is that you create your own custom implementation, right? And actually, let's just take a look at it here. So, class routing data source configuration. Okay. Bean return new. There we go. See, so yeah. So you provide a bunch of target data sources. And then I guess the key that you provide in that method is the thing that's used to find the right data source to use. Oh, is it? Voice is echoing. Is that better? Worse? I don't know. Okay, so basically, let's go back to this code. Okay, I'm not gonna have time. I have to go eat dinner here, friend, pretty soon. But here's an example, a very simple one. Okay, so static class Josh's. Oh, you got Twitch and YouTube playing. I appreciate it. No problem. That means I get double the views. Doesn't that count? So Josh's routing data source implements abstract routing data source. And you're gonna, let's say that we have coffee for dinner, truest 3 words in the language. What's an example? Let's say you have I know this is like crazy, but what if you have a SQL database for every letter? Maybe you're doing sharding, right? Where, for all the customers or maybe you have buckets, right? Maybe you have different databases for different sets of data and different buckets of some sort of bucketing mechanism, right? Or maybe you have geolocation. Maybe you've got one application, but you want to talk to different databases based on the use case. Or maybe you just want to like route to dev or prod or whatever, right? Whatever that context is, that's a good example. Actually, we can dev and prod is simple enough, but imagine you've got some sort of Spring security application. You look up the current user, the current authenticated user in the security context holder and then you get the current user, and then you get the bucket name that is assigned to that user, right? You've got a custom detail about the user there, okay? And now you've got that. Now you store that in a well-known thread local, okay? Well, then this is going to give you, you're supposed to return for the current thread local, for the current thread, you're supposed to return that key here. And you're supposed to have provided a map with all those keys and all those databases, right? So let's try it out. New Josh's routing data source, and we need to provide a map. So implements this. Okay. We need to provide the constructor and this. We'll say set. And then actually, let's just do that here. It's map object DBs. Okay. This dot set. So DBs. Okay. And so we go here and var prod, I don't know, GeoDBs. Let's just try that. Map that of whatever, I don't know, EMEA. And then we can provide the, let's see, where's an embedded database? This is a very silly example, but let's try it out, okay? Let's see, static class, and then private data source or region, string region, okay? And the driver, what is this? It's driver, right? It's driver data. Driver manager. There, load. Okay, so return this, and then the region, we'll just use that to differentiate the embedded database. Okay, so now I'll say, okay, for region EMEA, okay, and then APAC, and then we get for region APAC, right? Okay, so now we got two different databases for different parts of the world. I don't know why. Just you can imagine some need. You need to route, right? You have some criteria that requires you to choose one database dynamically. Okay, and then we pass in those that information. So it's looking for a map of object of, but realistically, it's just a string in our case and a database. So where's our thing here? Let's just make this explicit data source, and then we don't. It's actually just a map of object. Why doesn't that work? That always bothers me that it doesn't work. To me, that seems very intuitive. This is okay, but var m equals map of DBS, and then m, or does that have to be object? Do I have to downcast it? I hate, like, why? This is so terrible. Let's just downcast that. And then map of object m. So gross. Yeah, okay. That's just, it's just wrong. Do I just want to support passing it in directly? No, let's just hide this ugly. God, it's ugly. Okay. So now I've got the abstract routing data source implementation, and it's aware of two different keys, EMEA and APEC, and then we need some way of finding that key. Okay, so let's imagine we're going to create another example here, another application runner, static final thread local of string current user thread region equals new thread local of string. Okay, and then we're going to have an example here. So at bean regional application runner turn. Okay. And we just pass in. So we'll say current region dot set EMEA, and we're going to inject the Josh's routing data source. Okay. And so what are we going to do to prove that this is working? Like basically we just modify this code down here, regional dot get, right? There you go. So this is going to be the key that's going to be fed into the map, which then is used to resolve the actual data source. The question then is, how do we show that that's actually working? Like, we could initialize both databases with some different data, so that when we run the same query with while only changing the key, it gives different results. Okay, let's try that. How about that? So, okay, this is so hackety. But this is I mean, you can see why this would be useful for multi-tenancy as well, right? You can have like each user gets their own database, and so you can write the same code, use the same data source reference, but now when this user is logged in, they get their own database. It's unique and scoped to them. So db geodbs.keyset, okay, or db data source geodbs.get ts db name. Okay, so now I've got that, and then I want to initialize it. So I'll say db var jdbc equals jdbc client.create db. I'll say jdbc.sql. Okay. Create table region, and then region, metadata, and then region name text, not null. Okay. That update, and then we can do jdbc.sql.insert into region metadata, region name values, this params, and then the param will be db name, which is actually the region name dot update. Right? Does that make sense? So I'm gonna create for each one of these, create data source for region, right? And then for each region name, we're going to get the data source. We're going to run some initialization. We're going to initialize it by running the same SQL statement to create the table, but the value that we insert into the table will be different for each region. So it'll be the region name, right? So EMEA and APEC. And so therefore, later on, when we then inject that single abstract routing data source up here, we can say var JDBC equals JDBC client dot create data source. And all I've done is I've changed the current region, the thread local. Say JDBC dot select all from region metadata dot query, and then the result the type I care about is string class. That's Kotlin. Thank you, Josh. Select region name dot single var result. Okay, result. So let's just make this a loop for var region name set that of EMEA APAC. Okay. And then we put that here and there. Okay, so what we're gonna do when the application starts up, we're gonna inject that one abstract routing data source. We're gonna have one JDBC client talking to that data source. And then, did I not define that bean yet? I did not. I think I did I? Did I? Yeah, it's right here. How dare me? Yeah, okay. So Josh's, let's see here. Okay, so I'm going to inject that, and then I'm going to issue the query, and I should get different data, right? So for region name, I got, right? Does that make sense? I think that makes sense, kind of. Let's just try it out. Actually, I'm working without a net here. Missed it. Let's see. Region metadata. Did I fail at initialization? Region metadata. Region name. Okay. Table region metadata is not found. Did I? Geographically partitioned data sources. Okay. So why do I have the feeling this hasn't? Hey Ray, how you doing, bud? Does update work for DDL? I don't know actually. I was query? So we could try that. Well, let's just before we make that change, I think we're on the same page in agreeing that needs to be checked here. So dot query new row mapper string. We're gonna get return rs.get string region meta data dot single var. Okay. Did that work? Got it. Oh, bad grammar. So that it didn't execute the first statement. You're right. So now query maybe. Huh. Region metadata. Where is it? Select all from region metadata. Create table region metadata. Is that not valid DDL? Well, I wonder if maybe the no, I can't actually. I don't know why. I don't know why that's not working. Okay, wait. Let's try this. Let's do the update just like before. And then we'll put a breakpoint. We can poke at it. So now, given this, got a DWC client, evaluate expressions dot SQL. How do I show which tables? Ask H2 to enumerate all the tables, or yeah, tables. Okay. Should I be using Postgres, I wonder? Would that be more clear? Okay, let's say it's Postgres. Okay, let's fix this. Like the problem is I'm using embedded, so it's very hard to see the side effects. This would make the demo easier as well. And remember earlier we even talked about how I'm not using Docker Compose. Guess what I should have been using? Docker Compose, for those of you wondering. So Docker Compose, Postgres. And the reason we do that is so I can go here, copy that, go here, new file, docker compose.yaml. And we're going to call this my database. We're going to call this, doesn't really matter, I guess. Services, APAC, EMEA, right? So we got the same exact, so this is EMEA, APAC, okay? And we want different ports. So let's do 5433, wait, no. I always forget. Is it internal and mapped to external? I guess that's what it'd be. So 4433, 5434, right? So that way, Docker compose up. Please work. Oh. So it's the other way around. So it's 5432, 5432, and it's just a 4 and 5. Hey, cool. Okay, so I've got two different things. I've got two different Postgres instances, Postgres whatever. Okay, I've got two of those on 5434 and 5435. Okay, and the reason that matters, why does that matter? It's because this is now, I need to add the Postgres driver first of all. Postgres, I've got it already, but Maven, copy and paste that. Go to this build here, remove that. Okay, JDBC Postgres. Localhost, and the username is whatever I put in here. It's secret and my user and secret. So at localhost /region, right? And then the Postgres driver is the one that we want. So driver reload this. Get shared timer. Let's just do the thing that we saw earlier, right? The builder that we used earlier. Let's use that to create the Postgres. So where is the Postgres? This one. Okay. Copy and paste all of that. Oh, and we're not even done yet, friends. Like, imagine this is going to be a dense video. It might even have to be a two-parter now that I think of it. Driver class name is driver. Because Postgres is dope like that. Yeah. And then the JDBC URL. And then the username is my user and secret, right? So my user secret, right? And then the port. So I changed that, didn't I? Okay. Localhost port. Okay. So region and port. It's gotten a little complicated, but it's fine. So EMEA Docker Compose is on 4355. 5435. Okay. And then the other one's 4. So oh, it's a lot of work. Okay. Okay, let's see if that actually works. Oh boy. Hey, at least it's trying to. So unknown host. Did I do that wrong? Clearly I did. What did I do wrong? Surely there's an easier way. Yo. There we go. So create the data source for the region. The JDBC post, is it just Postgres? No, that worked. It's just yeah. Okay. Hey, something's happening. It says incorrect result size, expected 1, actual 0. But why? So let's do the breakpoint again. Yeah, never even got there. Update, what is that about? Okay. I think it has to be an update, right? Surely. Right, but I'm not asking it to return. I mean, I'm not asserting anything, right? Like this should be just 0, which is fine. But it's never getting to this point, right? Like, okay, wait. Create the data source. Yeah, it's from the SQL query, isn't it? You're asking where the 1 is coming from. It's in the SQL query, I think. Let me check. Here, I'm doing single, right? But it's insert of this. Oh, really? I'm glad that didn't work. I would have felt so stupid. Create table. Wait, maybe it did work. Is it because there's already a table? Postgres. Okay. And we say that this is EMEA, I think. Test connection. Yep, seemed good. And then duplicate it. Yeah, or I can do create if it not exists, but like it's not creating it at all. Is it some sort of transaction thing I don't know about? Also, did I get that right? So APAC is 5434 properties. 5434. And then EMEA is 5435. I mean, okay, just it's something to do with the. This is not hard. Let's just do it manually, just because this is not even what I'm trying to demonstrate. I feel like I've gotten tar pitted. Okay. And now what about this one? Okay. So now refresh this. Okay. So now the tables are correctly created. And then okay, so now okay, from when I'm connected to EMEA, I ask you for that. When I go to APEC, it's APEC. Okay, great. Freaking A. So let's go back and simplify my Java code, which, to be honest, I shouldn't have complicated with all this stuff anyway. I do want to figure out what is the issue, but that's neither here nor there. So I go down to here. This one, get rid of all that. So basically, we've got two databases that we're creating, or we're returning that, okay? And it still fails. Wonder why. Okay, there's only one record. So now what? Region name checks out. Query. Can't. Okay, interesting. Determine. So it's we're getting somewhere. It's using the abstract routing data source. It's unable to obtain the JDBC connection because it can't find the lookup key null. Why would it be null? Oh, do I have other code that's like trying to use this? Wait a minute, wait. That's Java, so that's a profile. There's no way that's involved. Hide that. What about this thing up here though? That's got a profile. That's fine. Does this get in trouble? It does. Okay. So this is the thing. I was trying to make it easier for me, but it's actually made it worse. So what if we just get rid of that one? I don't get it. Like, why would this fail? Let's look at the abstract routing data source for us. Routing. Oh. So there's a bit of indirection here, right? So you basically give it, the map can be either a data source instance or data source name string, which can then be used to resolve. Okay. So if nothing else is specified. Debug. Okay. So where's my abstract routing data source? What does this return? It's an unmodified map. This resolved data sources. Oh, interesting. Was I just failing to call that, you think? Probably, right? Like that seems. Well, is that true? No, that's not true because it's a spring bean. So let's get rid of all that for now. And then we've got this dot set target data sources. Regional. Okay, so what's the issue here? So what is the result? Resolve. So given a data source name, return the result. Like, is that the, do we just override that? And then, okay, let's try that. That might be easier, right? So the dbs.get data source name. I want to debug this just to see what it gives me. Oh, okay, EMEA, great. Close. For region EMEA, I got EMEA. But why? Why is it sad now? Hmm. It's obviously created two different Hikari pools. Is it the APAC? Like, okay, APAC. And then what about, what am I passing into this thing? APAC, APAC, okay. Pass that in there. So do I need any of that? Maybe I just do this. No. Target data sources is required. Okay. I mean, it's a map of object to object. Var map of object to object. New hash map object. Yes, this makes me as sad as it does you. Map of object to object, put all. Does this work? Maybe. Yes. Disgusting. Map of object to object. Also, why am I calling super? Does this call anything? Probably does. Okay, whatever. Leave it alone. What does initialize get called? Like, feel icky doing that, but I just have to try. Okay, clearly that's not the issue. It's not a life cycle issue. There's just some condition here. So the test is, I'm going to be able to debug this. So dbs.get data source name, and then put a breakpoint there. Okay. Not there. I meant like there. It never even gets invoked, does it? So that doesn't do anything for me. So string to database name. right? Does that work? Oh, this type system. Okay, I'm getting distracted because I'm bored with this. I'm getting into the constructor. I'm just not getting to the that database lookup thing that I was creating. It's not being invoked. But yeah, this is. I hope it's being called. Yeah, there it is. Scared me, man, or woman, or whatever. Looks like it's got two data sources. They're both Hikaru data sources. Seems fine. My user secret. So for APEC, it's pointing to APEC. What about EMEA? EMEA seems to have the right port and everything. Who knows if it'll actually work though? Evaluate expression. That gives me a data source. Create whatever, get connection dot create statement dot select all from region metadata dot execute. Okay. Oh no. It's public, right? What did I think I was doing? Public, this, okay. So what's the, it's not schema or something like that, right? Localhost, port, and then the database name isn't, what is this? So is this schema is just public, right? Although it worked for one. That's the other thing that's weird. So okay. Different. Why did it? Okay. Interesting. Oh, because the actuator is pulling it in. Okay. That's good to know. So let's, for now, let's get rid of actuator. Okay. Maven reload. Okay. Returning EMEA. Database public does not exist. What is the deal? Create table. Owner, region metadata. Table spaces. Am I doing something like obviously wrong? Here. It's Postgres. Okay, so that's it's not public, it's Postgres. Okay, easy. We can fix this. There you go. That worked despite, so anyway, the distinguishing thing was not the region, it's the port, right? But you can imagine some strategy where the region is used to look up the thing. In fact, here, like, I wish that worked. Integer string lookup equals new concurrent hash map map.of, and then the port is it's this, right? So we'll do that reverse. Right? Okay. So now we've got an actual map, and then we can say var region equals lookup.get port. Don't need that. And then, you know, we could do something with it, right? Okay, you get the idea, right? Whew, that was painful, but it works. Well, at least it used to work. So I don't even need this, really. Maybe it's the other way around, actually. So, given a region, we can look up the port. That's what I should have done. Okay, so the region is this, and then that. So it's the other way around. So given a region, this.lookup.get the port given the region. Okay, and then down here, keep it simple. Okay, so you get the idea, right? That took a long. It was just me screwing up the URLs that caused this to be so painful, but it's actually very, very simple. We have this class. We implement abstract routing data source, right? Seed it with some knowledge about the table, the lookup table, and then we've given it a strategy to resolve the key, and then use that key to resolve the actual record from the target data sources. Simple, very, very simple. But I just screwed it up. So profile routing. So that's good. I'm glad we did this. But restart that. Okay, for region APAC, I got APAC. For region EMEA, anyway. Okay, great. So let's call that good. Commit that code up to the routing. Okay, push. All right, and I think let's do one more, and then I got a boogie. People are already finishing. They're doing the dishes. I've already missed dinner. So routing data source. So routing data source has been around for a long time. I think that deserves its own video. Indeed, it probably could be its own video, but the last piece of our little puzzle here, friends, is this thing right here. The lazy connection. Lazy connection, data source proxy. And this one's a lot more easy to understand, right? Lazy connection, data source proxy. Basically, you wrap your data source with this, and it lazily creates the connection, right? So you use a connection pool inside of this, but it won't even bother creating the connection until you're actually going to create a statement and do something with it, right? So if you just call get connection, it doesn't do anything, it looks like. Yeah, it's creating a proxy out of connection, right? And it's a lazy connection invocation handler. So this in turn looks for methods like equals, hash code, get target connection, unwrap, and is wrapper for. It delegates to the underlying thing. But and then it looks for actual methods that really do require connection. It says, okay, if there's nothing already created, and if the method is this, then blah. If it's this, then blah. You know, and so on. But it defers as much work as possible until finally it actually has to do it. And it's just really, so get target connection. That's this bit right here, right? Finally method invoke, get target connection. So basically, it tries to go through all those other methods, those other use cases. Only when you at the absolute last minute does it actually go into the underlying data source and create one. So this is very good because, again, if you've got a second level cache or something like that, as is common, in a lot of data tiers, then there's no point in creating a connection if you're not going to use it. If you're just going to make a call to Redis or to cache or whatever, right? Okay, I'll come up with my own little example of that offline, but I'm going to call it good. I think we had some fun. We did some things. This is going to be good. I'm going to try and get this out as a spring tip video sooner rather than later. So stay tuned for that. Hey friends, thanks for hanging out. I hope you got something out of this. I certainly did. Thanks for helping me debug. Good to refreshing some stuff to de-rust, like some of the stuff I remembered, it's just been so long. I'm just very happy to have it refreshed. Thanks for all your help tonight, everybody. Happy holidays, happy New Year. Welcome back to the stream. I can't wait to continue this year. I'm gonna be in Switzerland in a week, assuming this head cold doesn't get any worse. I'll be in Switzerland not even a week, on Wednesday. I fly out. So I'm going to Ticino for Voxed Days Ticino, and then I'm off to CERN, CERN, in Geneva or near Geneva. And they're both Switzerland, right? One's the French-speaking part of it, and the other one's the Italian-speaking part of it. But yeah, if you're in that region, come say hi. It'll be great, All right. Hey, everybody. Thank you. Appreciate you. Good night. Have a good one. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.